Welcome to another video, Purple Political Talk here. Today is Wednesday, July 7th, and we're going to be taking a look at a hypothetical 2024 presidential matchup. This one is a little bit more for fun. This is going to be discussing AOC against Tucker Carlson. So this matchup is highly unlikely because I don't really see Tucker Carlson running for president anytime in the future. Both of these people are, very highly polarizing for the opposite, side of the aisle. AOC is often branded as, a big socialist, that sort of message, and Tucker Carlson is just branded as, extremist, radical right. So this is why this race is going to be interesting. And it's going to be a great prediction. So, but before we get started, I want to remind you guys to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to be up to date with our latest content. And I want to let you guys know that you're now able to become a channel member today. So if you want to become a channel member, you can by pressing the join button down next to the subscribe button. So now that we've gotten all of that out of the way, let's get started with the video. So this matchup, I think, is actually more, people sometimes overrate Tucker Carlson over AOC. I think that AOC could do somewhat, better maybe than Tucker Carlson or relatively to what people think. AOC in this matchup has certain more appeal in certain regions of the country that Tucker Carlson does fail to have. In this matchup, you see, I think that this is where we're going to start off, and I think you're gonna see, your safe states for the Democrats. It's going to expand from what they regularly have. You regularly have your Californias, your West Coast, your Northeast. You have your Illinois and New Mexico. I think is one of the states that would be added, and I think Virginia as well. Virginia really is a state that really likes Democratic establishment. It's become a state that has been more and more voting for the Democrats in that sense. Once you put someone Tucker Carlson there, Tucker Carlson would do horrible in Northern Virginia. And then in Southern Virginia, he could do okay. We also have to remember, Tucker Carlson fails to get some, minority appeal. He's going to do great with white voters up in the Midwest. He's going to do great with voters in Texas. But then when you start getting to states like Georgia, Florida, and Arizona, we're going to see different types of races because, Tucker Carlson is probably not the type of candidate. But we'll discuss that as we go on in the video. As far as the safe states go for Tucker Carlson, we would see him do very well in, the more rural states, and usually the more, the Bible Belt, those regions of the country that are just overly conservative. You see, with Tucker Carlson, one of the things that I think we would see if this matchup was ever to happen is he would do well in certain regions of the country and, bring those margins home. AOC is a bad candidate for the Democrats to run, regardless of the candidate. But if the Republicans run such a bad candidate like Tucker Carlson, I think we can all agree that a Democrat, even AOC, is almost guaranteed a victory. So I think that's something that is actually very interesting. So our initial electoral map shows Tucker Carlson at 125 electoral votes to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's 201 electoral votes. Now let's move on to the likely states, or states that have that would go by less than 15%, but more than 5% for either candidate. Let's start off with AOC. You see, with AOC, I really think that we might be looking at somewhere in the in the country where she would do well, and I think you're gonna see her do very well with the voters in Colorado. Colorado is a state that is more liberal, more progressive, and I think the Democrats just have a big, strong support in that region. Now, where else could we see AOC do well? In this specific matchup, I think that AOC could have, I think do in the likely margin in Nevada as well. Latino support would be there for her. You would see certain trends, and I think that we can see them, that a lot of the voters in Nevada, are trending more Democratic. Although the party in Nevada is kind of in disarray, Tucker Carlson doesn't have the same appeal as Trump had. He has the same populist appeal, but he is not Trump. And in a way, he doesn't have that Latino appeal that Trump had to a certain extent in some states and to a big extent in other states. But that is going to be impactful into this electoral prediction. Now that we have those those states in the likely column for the Democrats. Let's move on to Tucker Carlson likely column. I see Tucker Carlson doing very well in Iowa and Ohio and Texas. Very usually, I would put the state of Florida in this in this column. But I really don't think that with Tucker Carlson on the ticket, the Republicans are going to do that well. In Texas, it's a lot of white vote that I think Tucker Carlson will do great. Up north in Ohio and Iowa, again, they would probably do great. You see, one of the big things I think we do have to analyze is AOC could make inroads in somewhere like Ohio and Iowa, make the margins definitely come down. But with Tucker Carlson, he's gonna push the older voters that do live in these states and bring those margin up. You see, both of these candidates are populist, and when it comes to a populist race, what really matters is how well you can appeal in the populist states. So, I think that's something that we should definitely talk about. So, I think that's something that we would see in these states, and I think for that reason, Tucker Carlson will win in those states. Going on to the lead states for AOC, these are states that would go by less than 5%, but more than 1.5%. I think that she's going to do somewhat well in down south, in Georgia. I think that she could definitely take Tucker Carlson for a ride here. With the black vote, with a lot of the suburban vote like turning away from the Tucker Carlson type of Republican. She is far left, so it's going to be interesting to see the dynamic in this race. But I think she could definitely win this by 1.5%, especially as time goes on. The black vote in the state of Georgia continues to grow and continues to develop. Other than that, I think everything else will be a lot tighter. As for Tucker Carlson, I do see him doing well in, actually I missed the state for AOC, Minnesota. I think that this state just has become liberal to the point where even if you have a populist like Tucker Carlson who could probably appeal to that area of the country, you're more likely not going to end up seeing a Democratic win here. The Democrats just have so much control in that state. Now going on to Tucker Carlson's lean states, the Midwest, I think in its entirety, will go to Tucker Carlson in this election scenario. Now, a lot of you may be asking, why? Well, the real reason is AOC doesn't have that Midwestern appeal as other people do have. And I think even if you take into consideration minority vote, things like that, Tucker Carlson will do a great job at appealing to that vote. I think that Tucker Carlson's marquee region will be the Midwest. If he, at some point in his lifetime, which I really doubt, runs for president. Now, in this specific matchup, I think that one of the big things that we could see is, AOC could make some inroads with the people who liked Bernie Sanders in 2016 and 2020 in these states. But still, she would probably lose to Carlson just because of his appeal in those states. Now, let's move on to the tilt states. These are going to be the closest of states. These are states that will go by less than 1.5% in my eyes. So, let's discuss the tilt states. So, let's start off by talking about the AOC tilt states. So, I think AOC could win by a tilt margin in the state of Arizona. I think she could win by a tilt margin in the state of Florida. As far as North Carolina and the rest of these states go, I'm really not sure. I think that Tucker Carlson could win North Carolina, but we'll discuss that. So, this is a big call for me. I mean, a lot of people don't think they could see a blue Florida in 2024. I think that the only way you're 100% guaranteed, like 100% no doubt, is if Ron DeSantis is on the ticket. A red Florida. Now, of course, in every other scenario, Florida for the Republicans is highly likely, but not guaranteed. Now, for AOC, with AOC on the ticket against Tucker Carlson does not have the appeal. He would lose Miami-Dade County. He would probably lose Tampa. He would lose Duval. Although AOC is a socialist, she appeals to the minority voters in a better way. And, Tucker Carlson could seem a lot more out of touch to a lot of those people and those folks voting down in Florida. This is a very tough call because the Latinos in Florida could vote to one of two ways. But I think Tucker Carlson just might seem a little bit out of touch in the region. As far as Arizona goes, I mean, it's really going to come down to those suburban voters. And again, in a lot of cases, I think they're going to go for AOC over Tucker Carlson. Now, in North Carolina, You see, I see Tucker Carlson narrowly winning that out, and I see him narrowly winning in New Hampshire. I think this type of voter, the North Carolina suburban voters, they actually might vote for someone like Tucker Carlson, and in New Hampshire as well. It really comes down to him having that appeal. You see, Florida and Arizona are a little bit different than North Carolina and New Hampshire, and that's why I think they end up going for Tucker Carlson. So I think that's a very good place where Tucker Carlson can end up gaining electoral votes. Going on to the last two states, I think that Tucker Carlson would win in both of these states. Nebraska will likely be gerrymandered, and then if Maine isn't gerrymandered, if it stays the same way it is, I think he will narrowly win that because of how conservative it is. It's a very conservative seat, so a district, I guess. So, I think that's where Tucker Carlson will do well. So this map looks really weird. I think that one of the big things we're going to see is good Sunbelt appeal for AOC over Tucker Carlson. But Tucker Carlson will make it close by winning the Midwest and, carrying a lot of those states, because I think ultimately what's going to end up happening is Tucker Carlson does very well in the Midwest. AOC does a little bit better down south. So thank you guys so much for watching this prediction. If you liked it, please give it a huge thumbs up, like, subscribe, turn on post notifications to be up to date with our latest content. And if you want to, please join the channel and become a channel member for some more great opportunities. Thank you guys so much for watching, and goodbye.